Hello, Ram55 here, bringing you another episode of my Kerbal Space Program NASA missions. Now, since my last video, I launched another Explorer into space, but I'm not going to bore you with that since I've already shown you an Explorer launch. It's pretty much the same thing. Today I'm going to bring you a different kind of space mission, the launch of a space probe, Pioneer 4. Now, the Pioneers were launched from 1958 to as recent as 2003, and over a dozen of these have been launched successfully out into space. Some of them investigated the inner solar system, some of them the outer solar system, and probably the two most famous, Pioneer 10 and 11, actually left the solar system. Now, the Pioneer missions came in all shapes and sizes, and they were designed to evaluate spacecraft operation and the environment of interplanetary space, and to test the viability of actually getting a rocket outside of the Earth's gravitational field. Now, Pioneer 4 was the first successfully launched U.S. Probe, and it was launched on March 3rd, 1959. Now, my first two videos showed the launch of Vanguard 1 and Explorer 3, and both of those were in March of 1958. So here it is almost a year later. But NASA and the Soviets were not sitting idly around. They have been very busy launching ballistically targeted rockets, looking at new fuels, new rocket motors, new tracking systems, all kinds of stuff. So they've been very busy. Now, in the space race, the United States wanted to be the first to land a probe on the moon. And President Eisenhower authorized NASA, or NACA, and the U.S. Army and Navy to come up with the Pioneer program. The first four of the Pioneers were designed specifically for that purpose, to beat the Russians to the moon. Now, Pioneers 0, 1, 2, and 3 all failed due to staging problems or fuel sensing problems, so they did not reach their successful trajectories. But on March 3rd, 1959, Pioneer 4 was the first American spacecraft to successfully escape the Earth's gravity, and it actually flew to within 60,000 kilometers of the moon. The flight actually took about 1 day, 2 hours, and 30 minutes, so it was smoking on the way there. But once again, the United States was upstaged by the Soviets, who had successfully launched Luna 1 on a flyby the moon on January 2nd, 1959. Now, their Luna was designed to impact the moon, but because of some rocket problems, it actually missed, but it did actually pass within 6,000 kilometers. Now, Pioneer 4 was designed to measure the radiation data out in space and provide a tracking exercise for radar stations that were specifically designed for this mission. I think they're called Goldstone, and there's another tracking station down in Puerto Rico, and both of those are actually still in operation today. So here's my Pioneer 4 sitting on top of the Juno 2 rocket, similar to the one that launched the Explorer into orbit. Mine is a 3-stage rocket. Has the large main stage designed to get it off the launch pad and on its way straight up into space. The second one is to boost it up toward the moon, and the last one is that little bit of kick to get it to escape the Earth's gravitational field. You can see it's a pretty simple design rocket, nothing fancy, pretty simple parts, which is what I want to do early in my Kerbal Space Program NASA missions. Okay, taking the first stage off there. Second stage, real tiny third stage with just tiny motors. Once you're out into space, there's not a whole lot of friction, so you can get away with using smaller rocket motors. So here's the actual satellite, my version of the satellite. It uses the Octo 2 for control, and sitting on top of that is a Z200 battery pack, and it has a standard nose cone on the top. Now the third stage is made up of an LV-1 engine, a round 8 toroidal fuel tank, and has a small inline reaction wheel for better control of the rocket while it's being launched, 2 solar panels, and a MechJeb engineering system. The third stage, which has already been attached, had a FLT 400 and an LV 909 motor. And then the first stage, very simply, a FLT 800 main fuel tank with an LVT 330 engine and 4 stabilizing fins. So again, it's a pretty simple design. Simple parts, and that's the way I wanted to utilize things. So here we are out on the pad, ready for launch. I went through a couple engineering little deals. Utilize the Kerbal engineers to help me figure out where the moon should be at the time of launch. On our way to the moon. It's kind of exciting. You can imagine all the Kerbal engineers and scientists are huddled in their engineering rooms and at their control panels, studying all the telemetry coming back from the rocket, excited to get some new information so that they can get on with the space program. And you got to remember, the space program right now is designed to get man into orbit, and we want to get all the data we can about rocket motors, the space environment, all the things that are going to affect rockets, our ability to maneuver in space, and the human body's ability to tolerate space travel as well. So this is all new to us. It was going into a brand new regime, places we've never been before. We weren't even sure that men could tolerate being in a weightless environment out into a vacuum of space. So you can imagine the Kerbal scientists back there at their control panels with their headsets on and discussing things, really excited about what's going on here. So here we have the flame out of the first stage. We just separated. Second stage is successfully ignited, and it's propelling us from well up in the atmosphere, and it will get us out into space. This will not, however, escape the Earth's gravity field, so we're going to use that final third stage, that real small motor, to propel us outside of the Earth's atmosphere and out of its gravitational field. So there's the goal, the moon out in the distance. Now it's kind of like shooting skeet at a distance of about 12 million meters. You want to lead it, because if you aim right at it, by the time you get there, the moon's going to move out of the way and you're going to pass behind it. So you want to lead it just right in front of it, so that as it moves forward, your rocket will get there and intercept it. It's all about timing and engineering and speeds and velocities and rotational speeds and stuff like that. But here we are on our way to the moon. So we're pretty excited. This will be the first time we actually do a close flyby of the moon. Some of this data will be used to tell us how spacecraft perform out in space as the second stage burns out. Now we're on that real tiny third stage, giving ourselves an artificial sunrise, because at this height, Kerbal Space Center is still at nighttime, but at this height, we're able to see the sun. So effects of the sun glistening off of that toroidal space tank there. That tiny little motor propelling us faster and faster, and you can see going straight up, basically, it's going to give us the velocity we need to escape Kerbin's gravity system. Now you can see successfully we have a little brown strip on our flight path. That tells us that we have an encounter with the moon. That's good. That means we're coming close by it. Now you can tell, because it's on the right side of the moon, that we're passing on the wrong side, but as we speed up, we're going to get there earlier and earlier, and eventually we come out on the left side of the moon, which is good because that's the side the sun is shining on. We don't want to be on the dark side. We won't get any information from that. So you saw also that little marker indicating the periaps disappeared for a while. That means that we were going to impact the moon during that time frame. So by speeding up, we're getting there earlier and earlier, and we pass on the left side instead of behind it on the right side. And for a small period there, we were actually going to hit the moon. So here we are jettisoning our third stage, no longer needed. Now it is going to follow us outside of the Earth's gravitational field. It has already reached escape velocity, just like the real one on the actual Juno spacecraft. They are both in orbit around the sun right now. These will be in orbit around Kerbal, the sun of this system. So you can see we're going to have a close encounter with the moon. Scientists are poring over their data, getting streamed back to them by the tiny little probe. You could see from those original pictures at the beginning of this video that the satellite itself was only maybe 18 inches long, cone shape, so it was very small. We didn't have the capabilities of getting large payloads out into space, but it was giving them the information they needed early on. Now, the original Pioneer 4 had photo sensors in it, and it was designed to fly within 30,000 kilometers of the moon, and these sensors were designed to detect that and turn on, I think, cameras, if I'm not mistaken, to take pictures of the moon. Unfortunately, the actual probe passed 600,000 kilometers away from the moon, so it was actually a miss and a bit of a disappointment from that respect. So those sensors never got activated, but it did give valuable information about the radiation out in space, and it was an excellent tracking exercise because this thing was actually pretty small. Tracking it all the way out to the moon, you can imagine, is a pretty precise task. But I'm accelerating time here, and you can see we're in a blue part of the trajectory right now, and you can see it turns brown here in a second. That's where we actually leave the sphere of influence from Kerbin, which was blue, to that brownish yellow area, which is the moon. And we are now under the effects of the moon's gravity. Now, you've probably heard from other videos on YouTube that the way this game is programmed, you can only be under the effects of one object's gravity. So it's either going to be Kerbin or the moon or the sun, but you can't blend, have multiple effects from multiple celestial bodies. So here's our little bullet, basically, flying out into space, going to have a close encounter with the moon along the way. And here we are getting our first glimpse of the moon up close and personal. I'm going to use some of this by taking some snapshots to pick out landing sites along the way, plus some of the probes that I'll be launching in the future will do more of the same thing. Looking at the lunar surface, trying to pick out some interesting and safe spots for our first landing missions, just like they did in the real Apollo program. But to me, this is absolutely amazing. This is one of the reasons why it's my favorite game. Look at the graphics on this thing. And you really get the sensation that, hey, I've just left Kerbin, I've flown millions of kilometers out into space, and now I'm flying by this foreign object circling our planet. Utterly amazing. It's kind of also interesting that the way the game is modeled, it seems like the moon's surface has a lot more detail at this level than it does when you actually land on it. When you land on it, it looks kind of plain vanilla, kind of uninteresting. From out here, it's got a lot of pock marks on it, craters made from asteroids. You can just see our probe and the dark spot there in the center of that moon, that large impact crater. You can see the moon, or the Pioneer 4 probe, that little silver speck flying by. So now we are past the moon. We are on our way outside of the Kerbin system, and we're going to establish ourselves in orbit around Kerbal, the sun. So there's the tip of our bullet, traveling at unheard of speeds, leaving the gravitational field of moon, leaving the gravitational field of Kerbin, and on its never-ending mission out into space. Totally awesome. So that was a successful launch. Now the real Pioneer spacecraft continued to radio information back, I want to say for 84 hours, something like that. So again, gave scientists valuable information about radiation, space travel, stuff like that. till the batteries finally died. But it continued outward bound on its never-ending travels around the sun, as our probe will do also. And there's carbon coming back on the other side. So we can just enjoy these heavenly bodies. Pioneer 4, sayonara. It's almost like a church, the cathedral of space. Amen. So back on Kerbin, the scientists are uncorking champagne, lighting up cigars, thoroughly enjoying their success. So here are our 3 satellites already in orbit. We have 2 explorers, 1 Vanguard orbiting Kerbin. But now we have a new celestial body to track and see what happens too. Way out there, Pioneer mission has left our system and is orbiting Kerbal. As you can see, it's actually on an elliptical orbit. It will get no closer to Kerbal than Kerbin, but it does intersect at least one planet, so maybe it'll have a close encounter with it someday. So our scientific knowledge continues to expand. So I hope you enjoyed that. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe if you'd like. I'd appreciate that. Please leave your comments. I'm always trying to make these videos more interesting for you guys. So let me know what you think. Again, keep the pointy end forward, and thanks for watching. See you later.